Welcome back for yet another edition of Girls and Geese Ask a Black Belt. We are super excited today. We have a fantastic guest on. Her name is Erin Johnson. She is a black belt. She owns her own academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She's been competing for a very long time. She started training when she was 9 years old, so she is a child of Jiu Jitsu that's grown up and is living the dream, competing, owning her academy, and teaching. So we're really excited to have her on here today. If you've not done one of these segments before, this is how it works. Post up your comments then with any questions that you have, and she will answer them. So any questions you have, this is an amazing opportunity for you to be able to get some answers. English black belt that has done it all. So feel free, please start posting up your comments in the comment section. We'll go ahead and bring her on. And hello, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Can you hear me?
Yes, it sounds great.
Okay.
Awesome. So I give you a little bit of a rundown on an intro. I'd love for you to kind of fill in a little bit more. Who is Erin Johnson? Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I currently run my own jiu-jitsu school with my husband. I worked as a nurse for the past 2 years, and I recently quit full-time nursing in October. And I'm just running our school and trying to progress my own jiu-jitsu and competition, and it's been awesome. I'm really excited to get to do this full time. That's kind of been the goal for a little while. And like you mentioned, I started jiu-jitsu when I was 9. Started in a place where I was the only girl for a long time, just me and my little sisters. And it's been really awesome to get to see the change in women's jiu-jitsu over the years, and actually have like a lot of women training at our academy right now is amazing to me.
Excellent. Awesome. So what got you started? How did you get into it when you were 9?
So my dad is the one who put me and my sisters into jiu-jitsu. We were 9, 7, and 5. And he really wanted something that we could defend ourselves with, and had done a bunch of research and thought jiu-jitsu was the thing. And so I remember him walking us into the school the first day, and we're just these tiny little girls, and he's like, okay, like this is it, like you're here. And we were, I think, the only girls in the class. And I remember the first day, the little boy I was rolling with, he like spun around me and like stuck my arm up behind my back. I was like, what is going on? And I can't remember if I liked it or not right away, but my dad took us to jiu-jitsu 2 to 3 times a week my entire childhood, pretty much. And it was kind of non-negotiable for a self-defense reason. And then I ended up loving it. So that's really good.
So are your sisters still training as well?
No, they're not. Yeah, the deal was as long as they were in the house, they had to train. And I think they both got their blue belts. But I ended up, from when I was like 12 to 15, I really disliked jiu-jitsu. And I think a lot of that was, one, being the only girl, being older than the kids class, but not quite old enough for the adult class, just not fitting in, puberty hitting really hard. Like, what is my body doing? I don't want to touch other people.
Mm-hmm.
But when I turned, I think about 15, I became obsessed with it. And so when I moved and went to college, I continued to train there. And I just kept going with it from there.
So what advice would you have? And because that's a common thing that we see. A lot of the girls, they start off when they're young, and then they hit puberty, and then it kind of drops off. What advice do you have for for parents, for one, in helping to encourage them versus forcing them? And then 2, for the girls, like, what are some things that kind of helped you, like, oh, I don't really want to do this, but dad's making me, to kind of find that love? Like, what were some things that you could maybe offer both parents and young girls in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily the best to obviously like force your kids to do sports. That was one thing that was difficult. I think my dad's reasoning was because it's self-defense, like this is a really important skill that you need to learn. And I think he knew that I would like it in the long run. So I'm obviously really grateful that he kept me in it. But if I think some things that would have made the experience better for me were to have a supportive female role model in the space at all. Um, Again, this was so long ago at this point. There just weren't that many of them. I did have a female coach at the time, but she was less than supportive. And so that made things a little bit difficult. Like I didn't feel love and support from her. So I think, especially for girls, if you can be at a school where there's either a female instructor or maybe another adult woman in the class who can like take this preteen girl by the hand and say, it's okay to be in this sport. It's okay to feel awkward about your body and make it more fun as opposed to it feels awkward and I feel awkward. I remember one thing that was difficult too is because I was so much older than the other kids at that point and bigger, I ended up having to work with the teenage boy instructor. And I just felt so uncomfortable. I think he was like 18 and I'm 13, and they always would like pair me with him. And it was just not my favorite thing. So I think finding like kid friendly faces, whether that's ideally a female instructor or another lady who can come help, or if it's a guy, like make him like really friendly and approachable. But ideally, like we would have schools where there's tons of preteen kids. I mean, that would be the ideal. So there's other supportive people together, but of course that's not how it's going to be. It's just not always possible.
Yeah. What are some, I mean, being, yeah, I kind of talked to you about this a little when I met you up in Colorado. What
Mhm.
are some things, I mean, you are a child of jiu-jitsu. You are, there's a lot of young girls that are looking at you and going, wow, I can't have it all. Like I'm a child, I'm 9 years old too, and I'm just starting jujitsu, and this is what I want to do. What are some things that you've taken as being a child and growing up into an adulthood in jujitsu that you now take into consideration as a gym owner? Did that growing up in
Mhm.
jujitsu and kind of seeing the ins and outs of it from a child and now adult perspective, has that helped to kind of create and cultivate the environment that you wish you would have had, I guess, as a young girl or just for women in
Yeah.
general or students, as a whole?
Mm-hmm. I think I'm definitely more aware of especially the little girls in my kids' class. Like we have one 9-year-old and she's doing her first tournament tomorrow, and I did my first tournament at 9, and so I just like I'm so excited for her. And so really trying to be that support for the girls and the boys in my class, just because I remember what it was like to be in that situation. But as far as creating a positive gym space for women in general, I think it's so important that we teach jujitsu that works for men and women and bigger and smaller people. Because that's the one thing I really struggled with, having male instructors only for a long time, having big male instructors. They just didn't recognize that some moves, the way that they're taught traditionally, are not going to work for my body type when I'm only rolling with big dudes, right? Like me rolling with another woman, I can do most of this stuff, if not all this stuff. But me rolling with my only training partners at the time, which were big dudes, like I'm not going to pin someone down in side control and try and Americana them from there. Like I don't have the belly girth for that, just to hold someone down. I'm going to get launched over my head. And so having to explain that to instructors for so many years and have them say like, no, like you just need to try harder. And now in my space, in my gym, I get to say, no, this is a good move, but maybe strategically it's not the right move for you to do at this time. And also try and teach things in a way that are going to support the female body and whatever you're going for in jiu-jitsu, not just one body type. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity to provide the type of instruction that I wished I'd had. Um, because it was hard for a long time to think that I was bad at jiu-jitsu when I just needed to do a little bit of a different style, or maybe but have been taught a little bit differently. And I could have made a lot of that stuff work.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's such a unique perspective that all women bring to jiu-jitsu, and I think having been a child and understanding what it is like to be a young girl going into jiu-jitsu, I think you bring a lot to it. I recently saw a video, it was maybe a couple months back, a community got shook yet again by another incident with a young girl. And you had talked about, what to do if something happens or if you feel uncomfortable in your gym environment. I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit if you'd like to. What are some things that that parents, I think most importantly, should be looking for when it has to do with a young girl and the trust that you put in your academy owners and coaches?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about like sexual harassment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so one thing that was brought to our attention by some of our students who were new to the jiu-jitsu space, which I think it's so valuable to have new ideas in the jiu-jitsu space because us being entrenched in the culture for so long, we may start to let certain things slide. But one of the things that was brought to attention is why don't we have like a sexual harassment like waiver and policy that people sign when they start at your school? And so that was one thing that we implemented, which I think sets the tone that we have zero tolerance for this sort of thing at our school. And also that we want and expect people, if there is any sort of weirdness, discomfort, anything, they would come and talk to us. Because if there's no trust in the academy owners, like if there's no trust that we're going to do anything about it, people aren't going to tell us. They're either just going to sit through it or they're going to leave. So I think having policies like that in place is just going to set you up for success or better success, I guess, early on. One thing I love too, I love when parents stay for kids class with their kids. And I know not all parents can stay during kids class, like there's different circumstances, but I feel one really supported as an instructor when the parents stay and watch class, and I feel safer as an instructor, just knowing that they have eyes on their children and they have eyes on me. And so if anything was to get weird at any point, like they've been observing. And then I have that backup as well too. And especially because jiu-jitsu is such a close contact sport, like with kids, even like we're helping move the kids' bodies, like we're putting them to the right position because that's just part of it. And it would be so easy for an instructor to be inappropriate in those settings, and the kids might not necessarily know. And so having the parents there to observe, I think, is really valuable as well.
Absolutely. An active participation in the whole
Mm-hmm.
experience. No, for
Yeah.
sure. So I would love to learn more about your journey. So you start out your child, you're moving into your teens, you go into college. What point did you realize in your journey that, yeah, I want to go far with this. Like I want, this is gonna be for me. Like, and
Yeah. Um, it's kind of been weird. Like I never expected to do jujitsu as a job. Like as a kid, I didn't even know it was possible, honestly. Like the gym that I started or I spent a lot of my time at was an MMA school, and so for them it was like you do MMA fights. There weren't many jujitsu tournaments. Like I didn't realize there were even professional jujitsu competitors, I guess, as a kid and teenager. Um, Once I got to college, though, like I knew I always wanted to do jujitsu as like my sport and my hobby. I met my husband though my freshman year of college at the local jujitsu school. Um, and he was just all in, obsessed, like super in love with all of it. And so training with him, it started to occur to us like, wow, we would love to teach and to do this. Um, and then I guess it was the end of my college experience and he'd been graduated for a few years, but he was deciding if he wanted to go to law school or PA school or if we wanted to do jujitsu, and it just felt super right and like something that we wanted. Um, and so I guess that's only been something that we've realized in the past couple of years, which is interesting because it's been such a fixture in my life for so long. Um, but it's amazing to me because this isn't something that we could have just jumped into after only doing jiu-jitsu for a couple years. So I'm so grateful that my parents got me into this as such a young kid and that now this gets to be my job. Like, what a crazy, crazy thing. And it's something I get to do with my husband, which I love doing that, like working together. Um, so yeah, just not expected at all, but I'm so happy it's turned out this way.
oh, that's phenomenal. So, what has been, and you don't have to get specifics, but in our jujitsu journey, it's not an easy journey for women or for anybody for
Mhm.
that matter. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had to kind of overcome, and do you have any advice for women out there who may have be experiencing the same thing or have?
Yeah, I think women face so many challenges in the sport, especially if you are at a school that has very few female training partners, or maybe you have a training partner, but you guys aren't close, or you don't have the same level of intensity with rolling. Like, I think all of those are challenges. Um, I think the hardest thing for me has been um, I have kind of an aggressive personality, and so I want to win and I want to feel like I'm winning. But when I only roll with guys, it's been difficult to get smashed over and over and over again and still feel like I'm making progress, right? And I think that's an experience that's a thing that everyone experiences in jiu-jitsu, especially in the beginning. Like, you start and it's like drinking from a fire hose and you're getting physically smashed and crushed and sat on, and it's so physically demanding and it's so hard to see your own progress. So I think um being able to step back and to realize where you're making progress, even if it's just the tiniest little thing. Like, even if you got your guard passed 20 times in the round, and then the next time you go roll with this person, it happens 19 times, right? Like, that's the smallest little thing, but even that is progress. And so focusing on those things and not focusing on, oh my gosh, I'm a black belt, I shouldn't be getting crushed by male purple belts, even though that still happens, you know. So that's something I'm still dealing with, but I think that's a pretty common experience.
Yeah, no doubt. So how have you dealt with, say, situation like, do you have any advice for, say, somebody who's having issues, who, and I probably know what your answer would be, but like, if there's somebody that maybe is a little too aggressive or somebody that's not a great rolling partner for you, what advice do you have for women when it comes to rolling with these people? Like,
That's
do how can obviously we have a choice, but what are
yeah.
some tips that maybe you can offer to people, and like how to handle that situation where you have somebody that's a little bit too aggressive, and maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
relatively new to jujitsu and you don't know, is this how it's supposed to be?
Um, yeah, that's a really tough situation, but one that's super common, like you're saying. Um, I think communication is the absolute like primo thing that we could do. So ideally in that situation, I would hope that um, the the smaller person or the woman dealing with the more aggressive training partner would feel comfortable uh, expressing like, hey, this is a little rough. However, that being said, that doesn't often happen because, like you said, maybe she doesn't know that this is too much. Or maybe the culture in the school is one where we don't talk about um, changing and adapting roles. And so I think that we can try and set up our schools in certain ways so that, like, we always talk about, one, you can say no to any role, which I think that's a really, really important policy to have, and one that not a lot of people, not a lot, but one that some people don't have. Like, there's an older culture that, if a black belt asks you to roll, you don't say no. Um, and as and I we need to be able to say no anytime for any reason, right? And so I think having that sort of culture set up is really important. And then having the culture of um, as training partners, we are communicating through our grappling. And so if something it feels too much, we should be able to express that. Um, Again, though, if we're not comfortable doing that, I think going to your instructors and just sharing that, like, your instructor should always be a point of contact who can help you navigate those situations. Um, and I think people have a gut feeling about these sort of things normally. Like, even if you're not sure if you're supposed to be getting smashed this much or if this is too much of a roll, like, you can normally feel it just a little bit. And even if there's any question, like, I would just go talk to your instructor if you're not able or willing to talk to the person that you're actively grappling with. One other thing I'll say, I think um, I've started doing this with our women at the school, but anytime that we have just like a new white belt guy come in, I tell him, like, don't roll with them. Like, Dan, my husband, will kind of vet him. I'll roll with him. Like, we'll make sure that it's a safe experience before you go do that. And it's not like you don't have to prove that you're strong or prove that you're good at jiu-jitsu. It's too easy to get injured rolling with new people, not knowing if they're aggressive or not. So you have nothing to prove. Like, let other people be the ones to test them. Like, as women, we don't need to do that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that doesn't need to be us doing that for
No,
sure.
no.
No, and that's a great philosophy too, to have that, kind of watchdogs, vetting people before unleashing them on
Mhm.
everybody else.
Yeah.
But so somebody had a question about, they're having some health stuff. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe kind of, stuck off? I know all of us kind of got pushed off the mats during the pandemic, for the first time ever. Maybe somebody's
Mhm.
going through a hard time for injury or illness or whatnot, and they've been, you know, separated from jiu-jitsu because of whatever factor. What advice would you offer to them for kind of either evaluating, coming back, staying, mentally sound during the time that you're not, staying involved and engaged in the community without necessarily being a part of it? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. That's so hard. That's like I dread being injured for this reason because um I'm such an addict. But I actually just watched my husband go through this. He herniated a disc in his back and like couldn't walk for 3 months, much less train, and had surgery, and it was just honestly heartbreaking to watch it because it's something that we love so much, and for so many people it's such a source of stress relief and mental health and physical health. Um, so I think like if you're able to do some other form of physical exercise, do whatever you can to maintain those endorphins, that stress relief. But as far and well, and so that might mean that you're not receiving um, that physical fitness from jujitsu for a time. That's okay. I think as long as you can find something to replace it with temporarily. But there's other ways that we can stay involved in the community as well. Like obviously my husband, he teaches at our school, and so that was kind of his community involvement. But um, like people appreciate having people on the side of the mats coaching them, cheering them on, interacting in that way. Like going to tournaments and cheering your teammates on, that's a really awesome way to do that. You can still study too, like you can still watch videos. If you're still able to drill in any format, maybe not full roll, but that could be really beneficial as well. um, yeah, I just think anything you can do to stay connected during that injury or health process, excuse me, at all is really valuable.
No.
But it sucks. Like it's just a
Yeah.
sucky experience.
It's
Not
like a
fun.
rite of passage. I see it almost like
Yeah.
at some points. It's like the knees usually that go.
Yeah. I know I'm terrified of having my knees ruined. Please no.
Jiu-jitsu is rough on the knees for
Hmm.
sure. So I'm curious. So you've been around, I mean, gosh, like going on almost 20 years you've been around, and you've seen a
Hmm.
lot of progress, in the whole, movement for women in jiu-jitsu and the presence, increasing the presence of women and girls in the sport. What are some changes that you necessarily haven't seen yet that you would really like to see happen?
Oh man.
Open up a can
Yeah.
of worms there.
No. I just definitely there has been so much progress and still not enough, of course, and maybe there'll never be enough. One that I was just talking about with my husband though is I would love to see more women at ADCCs. Like I can't believe we still only have two 8-woman brackets, and the weight classes there's only two weight classes, um, like 132 pounds and under and 132 pounds and over. Like that is such a rough setup for women, and I'm involved. There's a new Instagram social media account called Onto the Mats. Um, and we just did a post about this yesterday, or maybe it was today, but the number of women who signed up for the East Coast trials was astounding. Like we have the numbers to support um, filling out these brackets more. And so that's really frustrating that that hasn't changed yet. Um, I think opportunities for women to win money in the sport are still pretty low. Um, I did a tournament, a local tournament, like 4 or 5 years ago in Utah, and um, there were two of us signed up in the advanced women's bracket, and the advanced men's bracket won a prize, cash, like a cash money prize, and like headphones. Like there was a huge thing that they won, and even though it was the same um, bracket, like expertise level, women didn't win anything. And it's like, yeah, I know that you had less participants. However, like, what is that showing to women in the sport? And this guy had a daughter, and he was like, I totally support women's jujitsu. And I was like, no, you don't. um, so I would love to see that changed. There's more opportunities for women in general. And then I think we still need to work on creating safe spaces for women in the sport. Um, More than just women's only classes. I love women's only classes, but if that's the only place that women feel safe in your school, that's a problem. And we need to teach jiu-jitsu in a way that is welcoming and, like I was talking about earlier, actually works for women's body types instead of just teaching to the men in the room. So that's just a few things, but we've made a lot of progress though.
No, and those are great things, you know, that we do. And we're trucking away. We're getting there, and hopefully we get a little bit
Mm-hmm.
closer. You know, we may not
Yeah,
ever hit that equal mark, but at least we can get it to where we have more women in jujitsu
yeah,
that are making livable wages off competing and
yeah,
teaching on a regular
absolutely.
basis and seminars.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's the end goal, right? Is to normalize women in jujitsu and make it
Yeah,
not about gender and whatnot. But
yeah, and to receive like the same amount of respect, like when my husband and I walk into a room and we're both in our street clothes, like you can feel people look at him and be like, oh, he's probably like, he looks legit, and then I'm like the the blue belt probably girlfriend, like whatever it is. Like there's just like you can feel the expectations are a little bit different. Like I think people assume women are maybe a blue belt when the assumption for a man could be, oh, he could be a black belt. And it's just there's just so few women still in the sport and
mhm.
so few higher belted women. And so that's going to continue to change too. But yeah, the more that we give women a voice and opportunities, like you're saying, to teach and do seminars, like that's going to start to change.
No, absolutely. Awesome. Well, I am going to go close it out. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't cover that I mean,
I
you
think
you
there
have
was
so
one
much
question.
knowledge.
Oh yeah. It looks like there was one question about a girl getting her first period on the mat. I don't know if you saw that one down here.
Yeah.
Um, we can try and answer that one
Sure,
really
go
quick
ahead.
if you want. Um, yeah, I think as women we're scared of getting our periods in white geese for sure. Um, I think though, like hopefully you have, I've never had that happen, but hopefully you have an instructor there who could handle things appropriately and, like offer her a spare gi, um, show her to the bathroom. We keep feminine products on hand at our school. I think that's a really nice thing to do for all women in your school. And so just try and handle it discreetly and, show it to her parents, whatever you need to do. But yeah, that's kind of an awkward situation.
Yeah.
So.
I think at any age, but especially as a little
Oh,
girl, it's
yeah. Oh my
definitely
gosh. Absolutely.
traumatizing when you first
Yeah.
start having that. But no, that's great advice. And I think you brought up like a really valid point is like having women leadership in jujitsu and in these gyms, which we're seeing a lot more of. We're seeing a lot
Yeah.
more people coming up the ranks now and sticking with it. Retention was the biggest issue. We got them in the
Hmm.
door, and then they get their blue belt, purple belt, and it was like bye, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're
Yeah,
seeing
one
a lot
thing,
more leadership, which is great.
yeah, I think the only last thing I would say then is I think having women leadership in the sport is absolutely crucial, but it needs to be women with like decision making power in the school. So like I see a lot of schools who have like their highest ranking lady, maybe she's a blue belt or a purple belt, run like a women's class. And that's kind of the extent of the female voice in the school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I think I think the ideal is to have a woman have that decision making power. So like put her on your board of directors. Obviously, we don't have full-on board of directors, but you know what I mean. Like, consult her regularly, be like, what can we do as maybe male gym owners to help make the school more comfortable for women? Um, and if you don't have a woman at your school who is qualified to do that, you can outsource it. You know, like I would so love to help other male school owners make their gyms friendly for women. And I think most female black belts would say that too, and brown belts and purple belts. Like we want to make this sport a good place. And so actually asking us our opinion and saying like, what can I do? Like sit down with me, help me figure out how I can make this space safer for ladies and more welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
I think being open to that would be so amazing for so many schools and so many women in the sport.
Absolutely. The more safe gyms we have, the better. The more women will get on the mats. More young girls like
Yeah.
yourself will grow up on the mats into strong woman leaders like you have. So this like it's really awesome to see to see child to see young women like yourself, you know, having grown up in jiu-jitsu and really taken on a leadership role in it. And I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge, so it's really a pleasure to be able to pick your brain a little bit today and get some of your insight. You know, you provide a very safe environment for the women and all your students at your academy, so it's great to be able to have you share some of that wisdom for our viewers and our followers here today. So thank you
Well,
so
thank you
much
for
for doing
having
this.
me. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. We hope that you enjoyed this as much as I have. Tune in for our next one. We'll have Donna Gonzalez on. And thank you again, Erin. Thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Take care, everyone. Aloha.